The NBA playoffs have been crazy to this point. As I'm recording this, both the Lakers and Clippers are down 3-2 in the first round. The Miami Heat, that was just in the NBA Finals, got swept. This has caused a lot of conversation about the upcoming offseason, so today, I want to talk about some things. If you guys like the content, make sure you like and subscribe. Let's try to get 69 likes on today's video, and let's hop into it. We need to start this off with the Clippers. Now, by the time you're seeing this, maybe the Clippers end up winning the series with the Mavericks. Maybe they even win the title. But as of the time of this recording, the Mavericks are headed back to Dallas, one game shy of sending the Clippers home. This has started a ton of conversation about the Clippers going forward. There's an insane amount of pressure on this team right now. A huge reason for that is Kawhi Leonard. They hit the jackpot 2 years ago, landing him in free agency. Then they decided to go all out and get Paul George, giving away practically every single first-round pick possible, plus Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's now one of the best young players in the league. They continue to make trades to take advantage of their current situation, bringing in both Marcus Morris and Luke Kennard, who they then decided to give extensions to. They signed Marcus Morris to a 4-year, $64 million deal. Luke Kennard got that same 4-year, $64 million. That's a pretty big contract for a guy that's played a whopping 4 minutes in this first round playoff series. Maybe Kawhi resigns, and the interesting scenarios are actually centered around the Clippers making a trade to form a big three. But if the Clippers lose this series, or really even fail to make a trip to the finals, it's hard to imagine Kawhi Leonard not declining his player option and leaving the team this summer. Now, the interesting part about Kawhi being a free agent is the possible landing spots. There's very few teams projected to have the cap space to just bring him in. Right now, the only teams that it would be seamless would be the Spurs, Thunder, and Knicks. Obviously, he's not going to the Spurs or Thunder. The Knicks are a maybe, but after their first round exit, he's probably looking for a more ideal win-now scenario. Now, that isn't to say that if a team thinks they can get Kawhi, that they figure out a way to clear up space. The other scenario we could see is a sign and trade, something the Clippers would most likely be all on board for if it was clear that Leonard was leaving for nothing. Now, we have heard some reports that Kawhi isn't going anywhere. We heard stuff like NBA GMs think there's a less than 1% chance Kawhi leaves LA. We see these vague reports with quote-unquote NBA GMs that a lot of times aren't even worth paying attention to. If the Clippers lose in the first round, it's inevitable that these reports will look a lot different. If he leaves without just signing in free agency, there's 3 teams I think come up the most. You've got the Miami Heat. We've seen this one a bunch. It's not impossible through a sign-and trade. We've heard the rumors of Kawhi potentially having interest in Miami and about his relationship with Jimmy Butler. I don't really see this one happening, but man, defensively, a big 3 of Bam, Butler, and Kawhi would be scary. You've got the Lakers. Obviously, it wouldn't be easy, but if Kawhi wants to stay in LA but switch teams, I think the Lakers would do most anything to form a Kawhi, LeBron, Davis big 3. The only question would be who would be around those guys. Then you've got the Warriors. This is the funnest one to think about and the one that's coming up a lot recently. It would actually be pretty seamless. If Kawhi wants to pull a Kevin Durant, with the contract of Andrew Wiggins, a deal really wouldn't be that hard to pull off. Now, in that scenario that Kawhi leaves, I think it's pretty clear that without any future draft picks to fall back on, the Clippers would most likely be forced to get the value they can out of Paul George. He's on a contract that's going to earn him well over $40 million this season for the next 4 years, which might actually hurt his trade value considering he's 31 years old. If he does end up getting shopped, I think you would see a lot of the younger teams on the edge of competing jump at the opportunity. Teams like the Kings, Pelicans, and Mavericks, I envision throwing offers the way of the Clippers. But I think there's 2 spots that are really interesting and I'm starting to see come up a lot. You've got the Blazers, who've got one of the best players in the league with Damian Lillard, but have struggled to take that next jump. Maybe we see a trade involving both McCollum and George. This one's been rumored a lot lately, but it's just hard to see the Clippers being interested in that situation. Then you've got the Warriors. If Kawhi were to leave to a team that's not the Warriors, this one makes a ton of sense. The Warriors not only have the Wiggins contract, but they also have a ton of assets. Andrew Wiggins has been pretty impressive this season, so I don't think they would go all in, but they've got a lot of draft picks, and they've got their top pick from last season, James Wiseman, so I really wouldn't be surprised to see Paul George in a Warriors uniform. But speaking of the Warriors, I know we've talked about them a lot lately when it comes to this offseason, but we really need to reiterate how crazy it could be. Curry showed us this season that he isn't regressing anytime soon, which just makes Klay's return even more exciting. We just mentioned it, but let's look at their current assets. Andrew Wiggins. They got more out of Andrew Wiggins than I think anyone expected this season, which makes the 2 years left on his deal at 26 years old really not much of a burden considering the trade possibilities it allows and the fact that this team's not going to come close to space to do anything with in free agency. They've got solid assets like Eric Pascal, Jordan Poole, and Nico Mannion. James Wiseman's value is undoubtedly lower today than that second overall pick that they selected him with was, but that doesn't change the fact that his upside still carries some decent weight in a trade. The draft picks is where it gets interesting. They fell short in the play-in, so their personal pick this year is actually going to be in the lottery. It has the worst lottery odds, but still a great asset. The big one is coming from the Timberwolves. Through the D'Angelo Russell trade, they got the Timberwolves' 2021 first-round selection. If it's anywhere outside of the top 3. Right now it has the 6th best odds in the lottery. They also have all their own personal future first-round picks, making for some crazy opportunities if the right player comes up on the market. I know a lot of times with these trade rumors, it can get crazy, but I don't think there's really any other team in better position than the Warriors to make an absolutely blockbuster trade, so we need to get ready. Next, I want to talk about the Boston Celtics. They're coming up a lot recently in conversation after losing to the Nets in the first round of the playoffs and Danny Ainge stepping down as GM. Head coach Brad Stevens is going to be taking over most of those responsibilities, at least temporarily. Now, the Celtics are so interesting because on paper, things look really bright for them going forward. This team is centered around their young duo of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Brown this season really broke out, averaging 25 points, shooting 48% from the field and 40% from 3. I don't think anyone is doubting that Tatum is the real deal. He averaged 26 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists, shooting 46% from the field and 39% from 3. They're both solid on both ends. They're just 24 and 23 years old, so it's hard to expect this team really not to be a contender at some point, with them both being locked up till at least 2024. This team will have Brown back next year, so after barely making it into the playoffs and a first-round exit, I expect them to be very active this offseason. The Celtics are a team that, despite having the big names like Tatum, Brown, Walker, and Smart, I think it's pretty clear why they fell short. We saw big roles towards the end of the season go to guys like Romeo Langford, Grant Williams, Peyton Pritchard, Jabari Parker, and Aaron Naismith. Now, individually, I'm not hating on these players at all. I think a lot of them have solid potential, but them collectively being counted on so much for this team, you start to see how they underperformed. I would love to see them just make some unflashy moves to strengthen their depth, but I also see a scenario where they look to make a big trade. The obvious player to be shopped would be Kemba Walker, but with him potentially being owed over $70 million over the next 2 years at 31 years old and struggling to stay healthy, that might not be easy to pull off. The only scenario I've been thinking about lately as a possible one would be to the Dallas Mavericks in a deal with Kristaps Porzingis. A trade similar to what we saw with John Wall, Russell Westbrook a year ago. We could see them move Marcus Smart. He'll be on the last year of his contract and might demand a decent price tag due to the value he can bring to a lot of contenders, but I can't see, a trade with him really moving the needle. We've heard rumors of this team potentially moving on from Jaylen Brown and focusing on building around Tatum, but I really think that'd be a poor decision, but I'm not going to rule it out. At the end of the day, this team cannot go into next season with the same roster, and I don't think that's what they want to do either, so I expect them to be extremely active. At one point, the 2021 free agency class was loaded, but after a lot of extensions, that hype died down. But I'm really starting to think it's going to be the trade market that's on absolute fire. I don't think it's out of the question. We see a ton of top players take their future into their own hands and look for a way out of their current situation. There's 3 players I'm keeping my eye on in this scenario. You've got Damian Lillard. He's a hot topic when it comes to this, but he has proven to be super loyal to the Blazers to this point. But you gotta think, eventually, he wants a shot at really winning. You've got Karl-Anthony Towns. He's been putting up numbers, but I think he might be the most obvious to want out. He's had Jimmy Butler. He's had Andrew Wiggins. He just got D'Angelo Russell. Nothing seems to be working. It really wouldn't be surprising for him to want to move on. Then you've got Bradley Beal. The rumors with him have been going on forever now, but I really think we just saw his last season in a Wizards uniform. At least that's my gut feeling. Following his first round exit against the 76ers, he declined to comment on his future with the Wizards, which might be a decent indicator. Man, would it be fun to have a player like him in the open trade market. But that's the video, guys. You guys tell me your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is going to happen this offseason? If you liked the video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and peace.